the finance department budget. This afternoon, I'll be going through 4 different groups, and I'll start with the finance department, which is also part of or includes the facilities department, which is why we also have Jeff joining us for this section as well. So these demonstrate our revenue and expenditures. So finance and facilities, actually finance is supported by some general fund, about 8%, as you see on the graph, but both facilities and finance are supported by allocated services that are paid by the services that are provided. Facilities is 100% paid for by those allocated services. We do have a 2-year lag on those allocations currently, and we'll be looking and addressing that process and how we are allocating the internal services. But right now it's a 2-year lag on those the dollars, the data that we use. We also have a fund balance, which is 16%, and that has been saved for some technical advances that we have, and also capital expenditure carry forward that we are bringing into the facilities department. The facilities department has been utilizing 2 different funds, their facilities fund as well as their capital projects fund. And we'll talk about the capital projects fund in a little bit, but we are going to be merging those projects into the facilities department. The other is other services or fees that the facilities department will receive throughout the year from very specific invoicing and services that they provide. Our expenditures, as you can see, is personnel heavy. The finance department is a department of labor, as well as the facilities department. We are doing, the finance department does paperwork, and the facilities is taking care and maintaining all of our campus Clackamas County facilities. We also have material and services, very little comparatively at 32%. That includes contracts, as our janitorial services are a contract there, all of our utilities, other supplies. And then we'll talk a little bit about our OpenGov budget software as well. This type of expenditures come out of material and services. Facilities pays and finance pays some cost allocations for other internal services like technical services. Interfund transfer, that was an expense, actually not an expense, but it's a transfer back to the general fund from facilities. Facilities is 100% served by those allocated fees. As we mentioned, they're a 2-year lag, and so we've had a bit of buildup in those unspent funds. And the reason for the unspent funds is we've had some challenges with staffing in facilities. We've been understaffed, as Jeff is nodding, and he has been diligently working on filling those. And so when we're short on staff and we've been very slow with the hiring freezes, it's hard to get all those projects that have been identified and approved completed. So we are looking to transfer $1 million back to the general fund, so those funds are available for future projects. And facilities, we have 8% for capital outlay for them, and that is also for major expenditures. We do have 4 vehicles anticipated in purchasing this coming year. And that was one of the questions we wanted to identify. And I know that we need some vehicles that are actually, they are mobile toolboxes, as Jeff said, for his maintenance folks. So they need good vans and good trucks to make it to all the different facilities and buildings that the campus has. Just I'll touch on, while we're here, on our FTEs. We did have a total of 10 new facility staff that were hired, and we still have 8 to go to get completed with the lobby staff and the business services manager, or the business maintenance department, as well as construction crews. So we're still looking to fill all those positions. Over in the finance department, we have myself. I was brought on in January. Blaze, as we mentioned, came on in December. And then we've had 3 temps employees that have come on to help us. We had Mark Gonzalez. He made a cameo appearance for about 3 months to help get the hospital authority, financing authority, getting started again. I've taken over that role as of March. In fact, we're having a meeting next week. Todd has been here with us to assist on the budget process. And then Tony Hesselback, who is a retired employee who's also come back, and she's been leading the finance group as well as the grants team, and many other special projects. Let's see here. So here is our finance report broken down. As you can see, there's $1 million in interfund transfers. We have our capital outlay identified. Let's see. And our goal overall with these accounting services, I do want to mention, I should have mentioned on the last screen, is really to bring finances clear and current and consistent, transparent information to Gary, our county administrator, as well as to the commissioners. And so that is what we're working on. And the facilities department is to have maintained safe and good facilities for all the employees to work in, and for our public also to attend to. So here's a breakdown of the departments by our new MFRs. As we call them, divisions. We have our Financial Executive Support Division, and that is partly supported by General Fund. The other is through allocated services, as well as our specialized services, our procurement, and our financial reporting, which is also our auditing division, and then our budget team. So they are supported financially through the General Fund and through allocated services, as well as the accounting services too. Courier, same thing. Those are folks that are very key. They run many very important information to all the different buildings and mail and shipments throughout the county. As you can see here, facilities management is broken down into 4 areas: operations, their construction projects, utilities, and their administrative services. And they are 100% supported by allocated services. So overall, General Fund supports 8% of the finance department. You'll see some credits. And again, we're talking about the lag, the 2-year lag of the allocated services. So if we've over appropriated, we are returning those dollars back to the General Fund. So we really have one focus, and that is to build good public trust and to have the county's budget be 100% tied to our results, our managing for results, and with complete transparency. And I shared this before at our previous meetings that we are going to monthly financial reports, closing the month, and we want to provide the departments monthly financials, and we also want to provide to the budget committee as well as the commissioners minimum a quarterly financial report. So as we're talking about the budget, you'll have a good idea of how things have progressed throughout the year, because the budget is a plan and we want it to be a good plan, but then we also want to see how well that plan is being executed, even with the changes that come through the unknown things like COVID-19. But we need that constant roadmap and guidebook to tell us how we're doing. And through that, I'll show you in a little bit here. Let's see, I'll go right here to our next major accomplishment. We're going to accomplish these finance reports by the completion of a new chart of accounts. Right now, the county has 8 different chart of accounts, and we are, Krista actually is leading the charge on combining that and has presented to all 22 departments our draft proposal of the new chart of accounts to align with all of our MFRs throughout the county. And then we can have that rolled up and present very informative, helpful, and guiding financials. That would be beginning in July of 21. So the next budget year that we'll be embarking on will be with the new chart of accounts. So we have secured OpenGov, which is the new budget software. We've implemented online procurement cards. These are some of our major accomplishments. We've developed the new strategic plan with the BCC goals. And our entire department has had their full evaluations, which is great. That's 100%. That means we are connecting with all of our employees. Facilities, they've secured some software as well. So they maintain all of the buildings and all the projects, and they have now identified and purchased a Z-Link, which is an asset management software tool that they'll be able to provide the different departments as well as the commissioners what our maintenance projects are, what are our goals, what is the gap between our goals and what's actually happening. And I think that's a gap that we need to look at in our facilities department more closely going forward. I'd like to commend Jeff and his team. They did a remodel at the CUP building, which provided a quick response to the EOC needing a larger space. I think they did it in, 16 hours or less?
That's correct. We got them over here, moved in and operational.
Yeah, that was incredible. It was awesome. So really appreciate the effort of you and your team, Jeff. Significant changes. We've talked about what we're doing with pulling funds back into the general fund, moving contingencies. It may not seem like it is, a cut, but what it is, it's putting funds back into the general fund contingency where it belongs and where it can be managed. And so we're not distributing funds twice. So if there is carryover in a general fund division, then it can come back to the general fund and be housed there and monitored. And then we know what our beginning balance really is each fiscal year. And so we'll see, as you see, finance return $363,000, and that was part of a plan that we will continue with, but that's, technology savings for improvements as we are on a road to many changes within the finance department to get us to those monthly financial statements for you. So other issues we've talked about, the chart of accounts project, which is quite involved and involves every aspect of the county. It will involve changes with processes of how to pay invoices, align expenditures. So it will be changing all of our habits within the staffing for the county, but it'll be very positive because we'll be all on the same path of providing good, solid information. So we are doing specifically chart changes within the AP, the accounts payable department, streamlining. Someone else mentioned that this COVID-19 is really pushing us to look at our processes and steps, going online, being more efficient. How can we do things streamlined, being leaner? And so we are examining each of these areas within the finance department so we can provide, excellent service. So this is the first of 4 sections, completing the finance and facilities department. Are there any questions?
Thank you. I see Commissioner Humberson.
Just 2 comments. 3.5 years ago when I came on board, there were 2 issues that had struck me as critical. One was deferred maintenance and the shortness of staff in our facilities department. I'm glad to see the increases and improvements there. And the other was concern about our forecasting software, and I'm glad to see that you have made progress in that area also. it's hard to make good financial decisions if you don't have good software that can do the forecasting that's necessary.
Yeah, and thank you, Commissioner, for bringing that up, because one of the things I did want to talk about too was the ERP. We talked about that with HR a bit and with technical services. The three of us are very close partners in this embarkment, and we can have great budget software, but we also need great financial data to put into that. And so the great financial data is the result of the changes and the efforts that the teams are making, so that we'll have that good data to go into the budget software, which Blaze will be helping us with. And then it's through that software that we'll really be looking at the comparisons, as I mentioned, that the roadmap and the check-in signs of how we are doing actually compared to our budget, because that's what we want to know, because we have a plan, and how well are we moving along on that plan.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate your comments, and the improvements in deferred maintenance is particularly good, because that can come back to bite you in the future. And it's in the long run, it's not a good way to do business.
Right. I agree. Yeah, because things start crumbling, and we want to have good reserves as well. We want to be thoughtful about how we are planning for those big replacements as well, and those maintenance. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Feely.
Thank you. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hello.
We've talked about some of this privately before, but I would like to hear what the implementation status is of Z-Link. I know I've been raising the issue of asset management for probably at least 3, maybe 4 years. So we finally got the software, which is great, but just where are we in terms of implementing it and actually being able to utilize it to identify what maintenance gap we actually have?
I'll go ahead and touch that. Actually, we've been having regular meetings with Z-Link. COVID-19 kind of pushed us out a little bit. We were planning on trying to be fully implemented and operational as of January 1st of 2021. It'll probably end up being around April 1st, just because of the delay. But then that's getting, as the commissioners gave us the money for deferred maintenance, but also to go ahead and get a database of all county properties into one database. And that's what we want to do in Z-Link. So whether it's ours or not, I've already been working with Housing Authority, Wes, that they will give us that information, so commissioners can go to the one database and find out the legal description, the number of properties, number of buildings, square footage, acreage in one database.
Okay, sounds good.
So hopefully we'll have that up and running around the 1st of April, 2021. So hopefully when we get into the next budget process, we're operational.
Okay. Do you have any sense right now, without that being fully implemented, of what the county's backlog maintenance liability is, what the shortfall is?
Well, we really don't know, because we don't maintain all of the buildings. We maintain the core of the buildings. We believe that we're probably only getting somewhere around half really of the maintenance completed. And right now with COVID-19, most of my maintenance group are doing a lot of cleaning.
Yeah. Okay.
So
all right. Well,
even our services staff are doing warehouse stuff, which means our maintenance staff have to back them up for the cleaning.
So it's moving forward. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Elizabeth, I want to applaud you for getting the OpenGov budget system. We've talked about the pitfalls of brass more than once over the last few years. So that's exciting. Well, several times actually. In the chart of accounts, I think is really critically important. I mean, to a non-financial person, it's like, well, what the heck is that? But if different departments are recording expenditures 8 different ways, I mean, there's just no way to compile information and do anything useful with it. I mean, it's basically useless. It's just a mixed bag of expenditures. So I mean, that absolutely needs to happen as a precursor to going to an ERP. So that's good work that's getting done. And let's see. Oh, you mentioned the Hospital Facility Authority. I'm interested, actually, I used to be vice chair in a prior life. And my experience as vice chair of the Hospital Facility Authority of Clackamas County was that we funded hospital facilities in other counties using the full faith and credit of Clackamas County. And I had this awakening at one meeting, and it's like, why are we doing this?
I heard that had happened, and you'll be pleased to know that the commissioners have decided to not do that any longer.
Good.
So we are only
Good.
serving within Clackamas County.
All right. I mean, bond council used to provide free lunch, but it just didn't seem like an appropriate thing for us to be doing.
I could address that too, Tom. We've done Roseville, Willamette View.
Okay, good.
And what's the one across the river? In Lake Oswego, Westland.
Marius Woods?
Oh,
Mary's
Mary
Woods.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I remember we had, well, and then I'll move on. We had one project come up from Terwilliger Plaza, and it's like, what? They're not poor. Anyway, thank you.
Oh, and I do want to mention about the chart of accounts. So part of our challenge when we're putting the CAFR together, as you are aware, it takes us quite a bit of time to pull that together for the auditors, and it is due to our current system. And I'd like to see our audit, well, I'd like to have it before Thanksgiving, but before Christmas would be great. So, and then we could actually look at that before we start building our next year's budget and see how did we actually end up at the end of the year. And I think it would be a good tool for us, but it needs to be timely, and the new chart of accounts will absolutely assist with that.
And just one last thing, you mentioned starting the general fund forecast from scratch, which I think is a great idea. Obviously, it's not working effectively right now, and I kind of like the idea of just starting from scratch, so you avoid like little hidden formulas and funky little things that can throw it off.
Yeah, Blaze can attest to that. It's many tabs, many details, and
sure.
many years old. So it's a high risk, and he has already started that,
Good.
but just out of time to not have that, you know, for these discussions today.
All
but
right. We'll keep the pressure on him.
Yeah. Oh, he's well aware.
Yeah, I can tell. I'm looking at him. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, I'll move on to our next.
Elizabeth, I'm sorry, we have three other.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Ms. Coldwell?
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to commend you for pulling in the contingencies. I've heard a couple of mentions of it over the last couple of days, but I think it was the right thing to do. I'm sure not the popular thing to do, but I commend you on that. And if it was me, I would also, it's hard for me sitting in this chair to tell what's in the beginning working capital in all these programs. But if it's unspent general fund from a prior year, I'd also be looking at that. Mm-hmm. I also wanted to say, we were talking yesterday morning about matching one-time only revenues with one-time only expenses. And I've just heard a couple of examples the last couple of days, well, today, in fact, that I thought I'd throw out. And I have no idea what the numbers are, but just as illustrations, I heard the treasurer talk about some money that came from a collection of prior years' resources that came in 1 year. And there will be part of that that's ongoing, but part of that is not going to be ongoing. So you could extract that out and apply that revenue to something that's not ongoing so that it doesn't get lost in the formula. And the example I heard of one-time only expense is the election equipment. And I said, I have no idea what the numbers are. They might be, you know, from two different planets. But you can begin to collect those things and line them up and keep them out of the universe of ongoing revenues and ongoing expenses.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. I agree with you. And we'll be tracking those.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, Elizabeth, one clarification. I know that Commissioner Humberston referenced forecasting software, and it's not per se called forecasting software. It's really the accounts receivable piece of it to a degree. And also, if you can speak to the challenge of actually getting the information timely in order to do a lot of the forecasting. Could you highlight those? Because I think those are really, I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought those were the major issues there.
Yeah, and let me go back just a bit, Commissioner. So we've purchased budget software, which also is forecast software. So you use our budget OpenGov, that new software that we'll put the new chart of accounts into, we'll put the new budget into, and then as we are able to have accurate, timely information into PeopleSoft, we'll extract that, put it into OpenGov, software to software, and then that will help us with our forecast. We'll look at trends. And you're absolutely correct. You brought up our accounts receivable module that we will be implementing, and we hope to, within the next 12 to 18 months, get that turned on and operational. The accounts receivable module for our PeopleSoft current ERP software will allow us to track receivables. What monies have we invoiced for? For example, the sheriffs, we know that they contract out for other cities. How are those cities paying us timely? Those are the kind of things. What money are we leaving on the table? What don't we have yet? And it'll also help provide us with our balance sheet as well, that we will need to to get into shape as well as we move forward with monthly financials. So the forecast software is also AKA our budget software. And then you're right, the AR module. And then timely information is really, as I mentioned briefly, we're working with all the departments on we're retraining ourselves on how and when to submit timely information. So I'm not picking on the sheriff's department, but I'll use them as an example because they're fabulous people. So they do bill other cities for security, sheriff services. Well, we want to make sure that they get billed for October, within 2 weeks into November, because the October is already done. So in November, we want to make sure that we get that invoice and that we can receive those funds due to the county timely. And then that information of having invoiced them is put into our financial systems that says, yes, the county has earned, I'll just say $100,000 for the month of October. Please don't quote me on that. I don't know what the amount is. But that's what we want. We don't want to get that invoice for October services in December. We want it timely. And expenditures, we want to make sure that, when we're receiving invoices from vendors, we want to get those processed as quickly as possible. And it's not really that that invoice is sitting in a particular department's desk. We need to work with those vendors, because sometimes the vendor will be late, or one of our contractors will, it takes them 60 days to get us an invoice. Well, we want to get that invoice timely because we want to record that expense, because true accrual accounting is recognizing the expense when it was earned. So say we did, a big project, we hired a contractor in October, but they didn't invoice us till December. If our financials say the expense was in December, that's not accurate. The expense really occurred in October, and we want to reflect it there. So we have to retrain ourselves to work with those vendors to get them processing those invoices timely to us, so that we always pay timely. When we get an invoice, we don't hold it, but it's rather getting that into our systems. So it's going to be a big shift, because from the finance department, I'll be leading and working with the teams and all the departments, is if we know an expense is out there, we haven't received the invoice, we need to follow up on it. So it takes a lot of follow through and homework. And it shifts the burden out rather than just letting the vendors invoice us when they want, if that makes sense.
Well, I appreciate you talking about that. It's you can have all the software in the world, but if you don't have the right information in there, or incomplete information, then junk in, junk out, and you don't have a good number coming out. And I do recall one of my first visits with some of the folks in the county in leadership roles telling me that we were so far behind on getting a lot of the financials from different departments that it really caused a lot of heartache, including really late audit reports as a result, because we just didn't have the numbers to come in. So I just wanted to capitalize on that. Number one, the second question on page 3 with your revenue and expense summary. I'm looking at the graph and I'm seeing a big spread in the expense line versus the downward trend of the revenue line. Is that an anomaly, or is that indicative of maybe of a problem ahead?
Well, what we've done is you'll see we reduced the general fund support, and we are utilizing the beginning fund balance. So that's part of what, you know, Sean was talking about too, is like we're not only moving contingencies in, we want to utilize the funds that have built up in the department. So then when we are preparing the budgets, we know the real dollars to operate and run these departments, rather than having our, you know, maybe pockets of beginning fund balance or leftovers that we use. And then we really don't know when we're allocating general fund, really what is the impact to the general fund to operate these different departments and the services that we're providing. So this is what we're doing this year is we're closing that gap because we're using the beginning fund balance.
Okay, great. And I'm sure that the beginning balance on the forward years would look differently, as obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So the last question I have, looking at the revenue stream for your department, you know, a good chunk of your revenue stream is allocated costs, and I'm gathering that's from other departments. General fund funds a portion of that. Is there a rough formula of what that is across departments that's accessible? Not to share at this moment, but to say, okay, well, sheriff department is X, you know, BTD is X percentage of that revenue stream. I'm gathering that allocated cost is 2 other departments, correct?
Yeah, the allocated costs are going to come in from all the departments that the finance and the facilities serve. So, and the spreadsheets are enormous and old and need to be redone and looked at and need to be refreshed for more timely, not a 2-year lag. So, so I don't know how, I mean, there was a lot of sheets. I've only looked at the allocated one, or, you know, a lot of detail on all the services on say how many invoices were processed for H3S, and that's going to be their allocation, but from 2 years ago right now. Right. So is that what you're, so it's hard, there's not a particular percentage, it's based on volume. And every department that has, for internal services, I think even HR may have a different model. It could be, you know, head count. How many hires did they have to process?
They all have different metrics.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right. You know, you know, one department that has a low transaction rate versus a high transaction rate is going to have, you know, a higher allocated cost assigned to it. I get that. Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if we had a set formula or that was actually based, and you've explained that. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our last person on this section is Ann Lee.
So when I was working at the county, I remember the procurement card reconciliation was done in Bank of America. And I'm really glad to see that you implemented the P-card reconciliation in PeopleSoft. I'm just curious if that applied to all departments in Clackamas County or just finance, and has it improved with financial reporting?
Oh, it's wonderful. So yes, we used to do every transaction that was made on a P-card, a purchase card, by everyone in the county that had them was manually entered through a journal entry into the PeopleSoft financial system. Very labor intensive, hard to get timely information, again, because, you know, you got to collect your receipts, you got to reconcile, you got to turn them in. Who wants to do that, you know? So we are always chasing that around. And to Commissioner Savis's point, it's challenging. In fact, I've got a list of folks I got to follow up on after these meetings today to go back to February. Yes. So the new system is all electronic, and our finance systems folks within the finance department, they have designed with TS a system to upload into the financial software all the P card purchases by vendor, by purchase, and so and then they'll hit the right account numbers. What each employee throughout the county will do, if they have a P card, they will go in and enter the correct account number, and then their supervisor will review that purchase, review that the receipt is attached, because as we all know, and the commissioners, I know they can nod, you need to have that receipt too, in order for it to be finalized and approved. And once it's approved, it goes boom, right into the financial software, which is amazing. We can have timely information from these charges, because we have, boy, I wish I had an amount. I don't know if Blaze knows, but it's a significant amount of purchases that are made on the P cards, which is an efficient way to do it, the purchases, the businesses, and get them into the system.
Yeah, I remember I have to chase people down every month too. And it was one less favorite job I might have to do every month, feel like have to babysit people.
Yeah.
The other question I have is about the job account and the new one that's gonna roll in soon. I really like the idea, and it's important to keep consistent between other departments, but does it apply to the other department doesn't fund by general fund, or going to be applied to other departments in the county?
All the departments within the county. Yeah, right now we have 85 funds, which is not fun. And I think we're getting down to, Blaze, help me, are we getting down to 18? Or
that sounds correct. Yeah, it's in that area.
Yeah, which is amazing. Yeah.
And a substantial reduction in the overall object count as well. So.
Yeah, instead of 1,200 account lines, I think we're going to 300. Yeah, I think it's.
Last I saw, we're right in the 300 range.
Yeah, it'll be amazing. And what we're doing is, and Tom, I think you could appreciate this too, as well as Ann, is what we're doing is instead of creating a new line for every type of expenditure, we'll have optional codes like project and there's 4 optional ones so that we can keep the account strings low and consistent, but we'll be able to run reports by any type of project. So right now, Jeff has to have a new line for every facility and every project. We won't have to have that. We'll have capital projects, and he'll be able to
project codes are useful.
Sign a location. This is the courthouse.
Right. That's good.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Elizabeth, I don't see any other hands up.
Okay, I'm gonna try to do this, make sure we can all see it. So now, do you see non-departmental?
Yes.
Okay, I think it should be super departmental. I decided that today because this is where all the heavy hitters are for the general fund. We call it non-D for short because it's activity that does not really fall into a particular department, but it needs a home. And the finance department and the administration office really maintains the activity within this super D, the non-departmental. So our revenues are, and I'm out of order than I thought. So this is where our general fund, our property taxes come in. And just a note, we had for our budget, it was a 4.1% assessed value growth for Clackamas County. We have pulled that back to a 2.1% rate increase for the budget. And that is the majority of the general fund dollar activity. We also talked about state funding. You see it's only 2.96, but it is a larger dollar amount of about $5 million, $5.5 million. And that includes the marijuana tax. There was a question yesterday about how much our marijuana and where it's at today, the revenue for state and our local distributions. And we are at 85% through the third quarter. So I'll just throw that out there. And also a fund balance. We maintain the fund balance, which is made up of the prior year's reserves and contingencies, because our plan is not to spend the contingencies. So that's a good thing when we bring that over as a beginning balance. And the reserves are identified for specific future projects. We talked a little bit about that yesterday too. And what's included is an $8.4 million premium from the C800 loan that was taken out for the new communication system in the Clackamas County. The interfund transfers, that's just, we had, as we talked about with juvenile, they returned funding to the general fund. So we're going to see that here because that's going to then roll down into our contingency. We also had the facilities contribute back $1 million. So you also see that in the interfund transfers in the revenue. Our expenditures, I don't know if you can see those yellow lines. I'm not sure why I'm seeing those, so I apologize for the extra art. What we have here is personnel services. In the past, we used to pay some unemployment out of the non-D, but we are no longer doing that. So actually that will not be spent this year. They are all, any unemployment will be allocated specifically to those departments. Now in material and services, you see it's 1.66. That actually includes the $1.3 million that we have identified for the courthouse, the next activity that is scheduled for that. And there is 50% of that is coming back in state reimbursement. And I apologize, I didn't mention that, but that's also in the state revenue within the pie chart there. Cost allocation charges. We have a lot of funding that comes in and out. And so there is still cost allocated charges to the non-D department, which I'll be looking at closer in the future years. I'm not sure how appropriate that is. And so that's something that's on our radar to look into in the next year. Also debt service. Right now, the only debt service that's reflected in this department is for work that was done on Sunnybrook, that when Wes occupied it and then Wes vacated it. So we're actually reimbursing them. We have a couple more years payments for that. Special payments, that's a big question that we always have, is what is special payments? And those are pass-through dollars. And this year reflects the balance of the C800 geo bond dollars that are left to spend on the Clackamas communication system, emergency system. Last year was the last big push for the vendor activity expenses, which is about 20 million. And then we have our reserves and contingency, which makes up almost 26% of this department's expenditures. Maybe this would be more helpful to look at the detail. Again, we have some graphics. I think we covered it. Any questions on this? Because I know we had a lot of questions earlier. Because that's the end for the Super D department.
We have a question from Mr. Feely.
Hello. My question is about the courthouse funding. So half of that is coming from the state, the other half general fund?
Correct.
Okay. And what is the latest construction estimate for the courthouse?
Well, the latest is we are looking to see what the ceiling could be for the county. What could we afford? If we started to pay debt 8 years out, what could the general fund support? So that is really an approach I think that we're looking at, because the $220 million estimate that we had included the DA's office. And we're looking at, do we need all that was, sketched out and drafted out? And I think, we're going to talk about that a little later, but so I don't have an estimate. I want to
later today or a little later?
Well, Well, a little later today, but right now is good.
Okay.
I don't know if Gary wants to jump in, but we really don't have any draft estimates, any new appraisals.
Let's talk about it right now, if you don't mind, because this is as good a place as any.
It's fine.
So Elizabeth she just answered the question. The last cost estimate was around $220 million for the county courthouse, the new facility, including the district attorney's office. The state of Oregon has told us they are still planning on funding courthouse replacement projects. That funding is at this point not going away, despite the cuts that are coming to the state budget. We are still in line, top of the line with Lane County for courthouse replacement funding at the state. We have to, of course, demonstrate the need and how we're going to match the funds. Just before COVID hit, we were prepared to go before the Board of Commissioners with an update on funding models, and then COVID hit, and that's been on delay. We have been reviewing a potential public-private partnership, which I think we briefed the Budget Committee when you last met in February or March. That is still a possibility. That doesn't fund it. That just delays the time we need to fund it. But it comes down to really the two extremes, as you already know. We go to the voters for a general obligation bond, or we fund it entirely in-house using the general fund. And I don't think that second version is feasible, to fund it entirely with the general fund. And as you know, our polling, which we have not done now for almost 6 or 7 months, but our prior polling showed the public was not willing to spend more taxes to fund the courthouse. So all to say is we don't have a decision yet on how to meet our match of the funding, but we have options that we'll present to the commissioners hopefully in the next month or two.
So what do those options look like?
May I jump in?
Sure.
You know, COVID-19 may really change our plans. The city of Portland, for example, came out with a plan that indicates they may never enter some of their buildings again. They will be withdrawing from their leases. We've learned that a lot of our people can work at home. Do we have a facility here that could accommodate a jail? I mean, accommodate a courthouse?
The jail is next.
Or could we build something similar to what we have and design it for a jail? I mean, design it for a courthouse at a much lower price. So those are things we haven't really talked about, but you know, I think the idea of a big, giant, beautiful courthouse may be something of the past. But we really need to figure out what COVID has done to change our business as a whole. So that's something I think we're going to have to talk about.
So my closing comment about the courthouse is I'm in favor of it. I spent a month as presiding juror of the grand jury and on the main floor of the existing courthouse. You know, very uncomfortable, old building, get it, it's going to fall in the river. But I really feel we need to be a little more transparent about what the options are for funding it, what the cost is. I'm just being really honest, but I just haven't felt that over the last couple of years. Every time we ask a question, I don't really get a clear answer. So I'm just going to lay that out there. But I think going forward, it's going to be critically important that we be transparent. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would agree with that. It's been one of my frustrations, Tom, that we haven't had, I think, as open of a discussion and actually met some of the, I won't say deadlines, but there were many times where staff said that at a particular point in time or a day or a month that we would have a report back or answer back. And it's been so fragmented and not timely that it's been a little bit bothersome to me. And I know that Gary Schmidt, the administrator, understands that. He's trying to work on that. And then this COVID thing struck. But if we've got any information, Gary, I appreciate you saying what you said about that information just before COVID. But if we've got that, if we've got some material, I'd love to see it. It just seems to me that it's just, I've been asking a lot of the same questions and haven't gotten really a complete a sense of it and had the opportunity to inquire or talk about it as a board of county commissioners about how we're going to approach this and respond to that. I had some ideas that I just never got an opportunity to completely have vetted out. And I think we need to look at all the options. And I would also say that what Jim said as far as buildings, that they may never do business or enter a building again, I think the same degree that's got to apply to jails as well. And I heard clearly, and I believe, what Sheriff Roberts said yesterday was as far as the proximity of where the jail is to the courthouse can result in savings. And I think we need to capture those where we can.
Commissioner Bernard? Okay, we'll come back to him. Commissioner Fisher.
Thanks, Brenda. I just wanted to make a comment on what Jim said about, COVID could change everything, and we may not have a courthouse. Portland may not have people go into their buildings. I mean, we are so new into this whole COVID. I mean, has it been 3 months? We've been at it since March.
March, April, May.
Yeah, so we don't know. We can't make these kinds of decisions that we're going to scrap certain things that have been in the planning process. And if you talk to Judge Herndon, I mean, it's been like 40 years of his whole career that they've been talking about putting the courthouse up on Red Soil's campus. That being said, things will evolve, things will change, and we can take things a little bit slower. If there's never a vaccine and we have to totally socially distance and buildings become a thing of the past and we have to live in a virtual world, then yeah, we're not probably going to build a courthouse, that we're going to have to figure out how to do everything virtually. But I sure hope we don't end up in that world. I was just thinking about this whole budget process, and as nice as it is to get out of bed and come down to my computer and not have to drive all over to go places, it isn't so nice being so disconnected from everyone. So let's hope that, a lot of the visioning that we've done over the years, that we're able to carry through some of these things. I think it's important. And absolutely, Tom, there's this whole report that Gary Barth facilitated for us with all of the private-public partnership and scenarios and how they look, and it's really super duper complex and it's public for people to read. Go for it. I think the process has been transparent, but it's heavy and it's dense, and I'm sure we can remember what date that was.
I can handle heavy and dense.
I know it's important, because public-private partnership is probably the way we have to fund this. It's
most of what I call my real friends, my neighbors and other people in the county, they don't know about this.
Right.
They remember seeing the drawing in the Oregonian, it kind of looked like a spaceship, and it looked too good.
Commissioner Bernard?
Yeah, I think we should go forward with it also in a public-private partnership. It is very complicated. And, the challenge is I'm not going to be here to support it. So it'd sure be nice if we could get something before I leave.
Well, we are actively working on, the financing side, right? Because it boils down to what can the county support financially. And that's part of, this plan. Blaze is, great assistant with this, trying to identify where all the dollars are and how we're utilizing them. And you, as the budget committee and the commissioners, really setting the tone of where our priorities are for, I think, who was it that mentioned, these are our, I think Commissioner Fisher, it was you, these are our dollars that we really have the most control of. And how do we want to use these? Where do they go? And what are the priorities? So, and the courthouse is on there, because do we want the available funds that we can find within general fund? Do we want them to be completely taken with a courthouse payment that won't leave us any room for 30 years to have any other type of capital needs?
And you have existing capital needs. I mean,
right.
If you haven't been to jail lately,
Right.
Take a tour. That place is really sad.
So it's, yeah, do we want to lock ourselves down with just one payment? You know, I think about the car payment when I was young and had one of my first jobs, got a new car, couldn't do anything, I enjoyed it in the driveway, you know.
Commissioner Hubberston?
Thank you. I'm glad Ms. Fisher brought up the presentation that Gary Barth gave us. Information on how we would fund this has been presented to the board about 4 months ago. There are 5 separate scenarios described in that information, including 2 or 3 versions of a public-private partnership. I remind everybody that the $220 to $240 million figure was a ballpark figure. No engineering, value engineering has been done on this project because we're not that far down the road. I would remind folks that this has been on the books since 1998 as part of the master plan for the campus. And that it's been reiterated by subsequent county commission boards over the last 20 years, including in 2015 when the master plan was reapproved. There's no question about the need in the courthouse. However, in light of what we've experienced in the last 3 months, it will not hurt us to continue to look at how we would finance it. But I do recall that Mr. Barth's public-private partnership concept relied on the idea of, as we retired the current 3 tranches of debt that we have, those monies would then be repurposed towards payments on the courthouse. Now, whether we do a $220 million courthouse or as Ms. Comfort is talking about a scaled down version, something that maybe doesn't have the district attorney's offices included, maybe they go into one of our other on-campus buildings, something of that nature. We can certainly have those discussions, but there's been a lot of discussion on this, a lot of transparency. If any of the commission members, by that I mean our finance, our whole team here today, budget committee members haven't seen that material, please get a hold of Gary Barth. He will provide you that information so you can take a good look at it and what the scenarios have been presented up to this point. There are options that have been made available to the board. No option's been selected. Obviously, more discussions need to occur. Ms. Comfort has indicated some concerns about the public-private partnership and whether that's the best way to go, short-term versus long-term, and those discussions need to be held. But there's been a great deal of discussion and a lot of information provided. But if you haven't gotten it,
I haven't, but I'd like to see it.
Yeah, you should. I think that would be beneficial, Tom, if you saw it.
Yeah.
I know Gary Garth would be happy to.
I think we should all have copies of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll send it to all of you. You don't have to ask for it. We'll send it to all of you.
Thank you.
There you go. So
who's paying?
I guess I'd call that an oversight. I would call it an oversight on our part that we didn't provide it to you guys, but obviously we will.
Okay. Who's paying the debt currently, or the department's paying the debt on the building, their rental rate?
Are we taking turns?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Let's go back to the format.
Thank you. Ms. Coldwell?
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I don't have a lot to add, but I didn't want to leave it unsaid. I'm glad to hear that the board is thinking about options. I think the polls that were so terrible, in my opinion, I never saw any other options presented to the public. So it might help ease some of that discomfort that, yeah, we're willing to talk about scaling it back a bit. I would hate to see the general fund saddled with that amount of debt. Whether we're retiring other debt or not, it would be nice to have that money freed up for other options. So I look forward to seeing the material on the public-private partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bernard?
I just wanted to add that, and I don't know if you guys all know this, but the courthouse has to be built in Oregon City. It has to, by law, be in the county seat. So whether Clackamas Town Center is not an option, which is one thing my opponent was pushing, So it has to be in Oregon City. We have the land, and boy, it would be a shame to leave all that money on the table. Thank you.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, what I wanted to just say is that I agree that the polling, the way the questions were asked and the way it was presented could have been done a little bit differently. And my hope was to point out that any kind of savings and the options as they're related to bonding costs and financing costs are really, and even the length of the bond based on some of those options, whether the term of the bond is 20 years versus 25 or 30 or longer, that's got significant financing costs. And if the taxpayers knew that there was an option that could save money and reduce that debt and reduce those costs, that I think maybe they might opine differently. And I think that goes into my experience years ago when we put together a ballot measure in 2009, at the worst of the recession. That was tough times back then, and everyone said there's no way that the voters would approve a $44 million bond measure on the backs of a population of 33,000 people. But you know what? We got 85% positive votes to do just that, and solely because we pointed out the savings in our approach of how to do that. And I think people respond to, if government can save money and save the taxpayers money, they will respond positively to a wise decision. And that was the basis of our success. And then Gary, lastly, just wanted to speak to that. Did you not send an email out to us months ago that the county courthouse does not necessarily have to be in the county seat?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Chair Bernard, I do need to correct you. The courthouse must be within the district the courthouse serves, which would be Clackamas County. So it can be located anywhere within Clackamas County. I did agree. At one point, I thought that was true. It had to be in Oregon City, but we confirmed. Judge Steele confirmed for us that is not the case. It must be within a district that the court serves, which in our case is Clackamas County.
Well, that explains everything. Thanks.
I see no other hands.
And just FYI for everybody, I think Elizabeth has 2 more areas to cover for us. And then we have the administrator's budget also. So if you want to carry on, Elizabeth, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Parks. So our next area to look at is our capital projects fund, which is completely funded by the general fund. Typically, but we are now, we have so many reserves. So our beginning balance is what we're budgeting for this coming year. And again, the reason we have these this large beginning balance is Jeff's staff has been understaffed and not able to do the projects. And so we've been actually the last 2 years saving these projects and the funding. We will be moving this activity, the maintenance and these projects, into the facilities fund. And this particular fund we will keep. It'll be one of the 18, and it will be reserved for capital projects such as the funding and activity for the OSU Extension Services new building. The courthouse would come through here. So this will be reserved for actual large capital projects for the county. So it won't be commingled with maintenance. It'll be specific for it. So as you can see, we have a little bit of material and services here, and that's for some of the contracted services that we have for the project, for any of these projects. So it's pretty simple. We're using all all carryover, no new funding, and then anticipating these projects with this full staff to work on. And we do have a list of the projects. I thought I had it on here, apologize, but you do have in your packets a list of those projects. And I'm putting Jeff on the spot. If there's any that you want to highlight, we have them identified by facility in your packet. And I know that they vary by department.
On the list, we had 38 projects. Continuing on here with the CUP, like we've been supporting the EOC. completing a phase 4 to go ahead and put in restrooms so we can again support EOC and emergency operations or training up here. But we have various projects across the county, improvement for ADAs or some roofing, HVAC, some individual departments, kitchens or offices. We have a lot of sustainability type issues too, improvements to parking lot lighting, going to LED lights. We have some ADA projects. I have a lot of clean and seals for all our masonry buildings that across the county, you have to clean and seal them about every 5 years.
I found them. Sorry, they were, thank you, Blaze. They were further down. So not sure if the budget committee, if you have any questions on any of these specific, I don't want to take you down into, you know, the details, but if you do have a specific question that you've thought of on any of these projects, Jeff is able to identify and
yeah,
yes.
No one has answered. I think you could safely move on, Elizabeth. That's fine.
Okay. Let's see here. I'm trying to get to my next. Apologize. Miscellaneous. So this is the last group of slides for me today. We have a group of funds, part of those 85 that we've mentioned earlier, that we call miscellaneous and pass-through. And I'll just kind of go through them quickly. We talked about yesterday that we have our special districts, all their personnel are within the county's payroll. And so we bill them exactly for the payroll that is supplied. And so we have just in and out, as the term implies, they're pass through. So, but these are for the some of the districts that we have. That was WES, and then NCPRD, Development Agency payroll. And then we have some other funds that we're not utilizing. Law Library is a fund that is 100% supported by the fees. And I realized last year that they did give a presentation. This year, she said, you know, it's an in and out. They hadn't given a presentation since 1971 prior to last year. So I don't have a lot of information, but they do support the law books and the checkouts and the photocopies. So that is their primary revenue for those services for the county. And then we talked about the PERS contribution reserve. We've moved that into the general fund, and that is that 2.7 million is identified in the reserves. But this is one of the funds that we could, through best practices, close. We did not need to keep a separate fund for this PERS reserve. This is a county safety project. This one is wrapped up. And so there's just, this will be the last year with this particular fund. I think it has something to do with emergency services, firewise program that we are receiving federal dollars for. And then we had an LID, a local improvement district, and that project has also been completed. So that fund will also go away. And then our TLT, or transient room tax, or TRT. So I've got an update for you on that. As you can see, the revenue has declined for this year and also projected in the budget for next year to $1.3 million. And so far for the month of April, we've received $40,000 in transient tax revenue. And then that's allocated, as you can see, administrative fees to tourism, and then also to support the county fair, which unfortunately has been canceled for this year. And then we also have our debt service fund. So these are funds that come in from, somebody mentioned rental. So we charge departments for square footage. And so that square footage, part of that rental goes to pay debt. And so you'll see that here, reflected here. And then we also pay out of this debt service fund, the GO bond, or excuse me, not the GO bond. The other, let me see here, we have a couple of outstanding debt for the Sunnybrook building, the jail, and the Red Soil campus improvements, and also the Portland Milwaukee light rail project, and as well as refunding debt service for the public safety building and the training center. And then the sheriff's operating LED that we talked about yesterday with them, that also the debt is paid through this. And then here is the general obligation. We have one GO bond, which is paid through property taxes 100%, and that's for the Clackamas emergency system. And then that's a closed, the Damascus operating is closed. And that's it of our unique funds that are also maintained by the finance department for various specific purposes.
I don't see any hands raised.
I see no hands raised. That was a good, complete report. Thank you very much.